The road to the Final Four is set. We just got done breaking down and watching the Elite Eight over this awesome weekend. We're going to dive into the Elite Eight. We're going to preview the Final Four that is set to take place on April 4th. Of course, we're going to talk draft. We're going to talk stories. We're going to talk feelings, crazy shots. I'm Stephen Gillespie of the No Ceilings team, and we are going to go ahead and party. The No Ceilings NBA show is live here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel. We are also on your podcast player of choice. I'm Stephen Gillespie, and just like I told you all when we opened the show, what a heck of a weekend of college basketball that we just had. Earlier today, for those who didn't listen to the last episode, first off, shame on you. Second off, thank you so much for tuning in today. While I got you, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, all that fun stuff. If you're listening on your podcast, please do the same thing. 5 stars rating, no matter where you're listening. Share with your friends. We're all having a good time. I want this family to get bigger. Help us to be able to do that because that allows us to do so many fun things. All right, enough of that. Back to the matter at hand. Wow, 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 wow. What a finish to an incredible weekend of college basketball. A game that had no business going the way that it went the way that it did. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, we called this little tournament March Madness. If you're listening right after the game, if you watched the game, if you listened to the game, if someone drew you a picture of what happened in the game, you know what happened. In stunning fashion, the UConn Huskies overcome at one point in the second half a 19-point deficit. They were down, they being the UConn Huskies and Coach Dan Hurley, were down to the Duke Blue Devils by 19 points. This Duke team was rolling, only for the UConn Huskies to come storming back, dramatic fashion. The man who I have yet to give up on, a lot of people have asked me, Steven, why are you so high on Braylon Mullins? How could you possibly have him ranked against or over players like Isaiah Evans, Malik Thomas, so on and so forth, Cam Carr, Tunde Yesufu? The list is growing. Every time I talk about Braylon Mullins, somebody wants to ask me why I have him over player X, Y, and Z. I hate to say I told you so, but no, I don't. I told you so. I have been in on Braylon Mullins since Jump Street, been advocating for him on No Ceilings. I understand the cold shooting slump, and yes, I'm riding a little bit of a high because of what I just watched. Am I clinging on to a one-game sample size here? Yeah, absolutely. But the scouting report justifies it. Braylon Mullins hit his only three-point make of the game took the shot a little under 3 seconds left in the game, was passed to by Alex Caravan, who was also only made one three-pointer on the game. Listen to this. If I was to tell you that UConn was going to beat Duke with Alex Caravan and Braylon Mullins going for a combined 2 of 11 from deep and a combined 6 of 20 from the floor, you would probably call me crazy. You would have said Terrace Reed would have had to have had another one of his patented March Madness tournament games of 30 points, 20 rebounds, 5 assists, all these other things, right? No, it's not the way that it went. It was a consistent uphill battle by the UConn Huskies. It was a gradual slipping of the rope from Duke. And it was the exclamation point by Braylon Mullins, who, again, caught the ball with less than 3 seconds in the game. Goes for not just a three-point shot. He's a good, 3 feet behind the three-point line. Catches it, steps into it, heaves, cash money. Again, the only three-point shot that Braylon Mullins hit in this game just like what we saw from Alvaro Figueres in the Florida game, just like what we saw with Dylan Darling whenever St. John's advanced. It was an incredible shot. This tournament has been full of magic moments. Braylon Mullins, a player who, listen, if you're telling me he comes back to school, I understand. I think that he has been talented enough all season long. I'm very confident, still am very confident in the preseason scout. I understand that everybody who plays for UConn has to sacrifice to some degree. Now, Braylon Mullins didn't sacrifice missing a bunch of three-point shots. He did that on his own. That wasn't asked of him, okay? I understand that he was on a cold streak hitting in, but I've just been so enamored with the play style. And for a guy who is a shooter, he plays relentlessly on the defensive end. He's a good rebounder. We saw that today too, where he was active, flying all over the place. Not everything was textbook, but again, 10 points on 1 of 5 shooting from deep, 1 rebound. That's all you see on the box score. Very active game from him. But let's get to the heavy hitters here. I wanted to get the I told you so Braylon Mullins moment out of the way, because now we can get to the draft prospects that everybody wants to talk about. I'm going to save Cam Boozer for later. I'm very well aware that he is the top-ranked prospect within this game. I understand that completely. I'm going to go back to a player who I have been saying for days, Maxwell Baumbach has been saying for years, Terrace Reed Jr. is a better player than what he gets credit for. I said it on the preview show, breaking down the incredible performances that he has had all season long, only to be exemplified, only to have a punctuation, an exclamation point of a punctuation to the end of his season sentence coming in March Madness. If you listen to the preview show, another Steven I told you so moment. Terrace Reed finished with 26 points on 10 of 16 shooting from the floor, made 6 of 9 free throws. Nice. He had 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 blocks, 2 steals. Again, I gave him a Bumblebee comparison on the preview show. He's so big. He's not supposed to have the footwork that he does. He's not supposed to have the feathery touch around the rim that he does. He's not supposed to have the passing feel that he does, because he's just so big and strong. You're expecting this like kind of cannonball, this wrecking ball, this whatever comparison to something big, physical, something that you just need to mow stuff over. But it's not a precision instrument. Terrace Reed is more of a precision instrument than what he gets credit for. And I've seen a lot of people in the chat. Sundeep18 says, "Yo, happy birthday, man. How was that game for a birthday gift?" Best 36th birthday that I've ever had. So thank you for asking. Fantastic game. And I'm happy to be here on my birthday. I want to do things that I like to do on my birthday. I told the team that I was going to do this. They said, "Steven, are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, this is what I like to do. I like to talk to you all. This is what I'm here for." But Terrace Reed was fantastic. Whenever this team was down, by 16, 17, whatever, however many points it was coming into the half, I don't have the data in front of me. I don't have a computer brain where I can remember each and every deficit that UConn was down. I can tell you that at one point, this team was down by 19 points. And in the first half, the only reason that UConn had any hope of coming back in this game laid on the shoulders of Terrace Reed. It wasn't Alex Caravan, who again had 5 points on 2 of 10 shooting. It wasn't Solo Ball, who had 10 points, who was 0 of 5 from deep and was 3 of 11 from the floor. It wasn't Silas Demery, who had 11 points on 9 shots. It wasn't anyone coming off the bench. It wasn't even Braylon Mullins, except for that last play. And in the second half, Mullins also hit these like really fun kind of, block extended along the baseline, fadeaway mid-range shots. There was a lot of fun stuff. But Terrace Reed Jr. was phenomenal all game long. A lot of offense in the first half, a lot of defense in the second half. He, again, kept this UConn ship afloat. And in a class where we're being told that, hey, listen, Ade Mara, he's huge. He could be transcendent at his position. I'm buying into that. I have Ade Mara on my board. We're probably going to talk about them here in a little bit, to be perfectly honest with you. I have Ade Mara top 10, but after him, you get into conversations. Well, is Merez Johnson Jr. a big man? If he is, he could be up there. Jaden Quaintance, a guy who had a lot of promise coming into the season, was projected to be the number one big man in this class. Still might be. We just haven't seen him. He's been kind of out of sight, out of mind. Then after that, you can get into this whole fun conversation with who is the next best big man? Who is the next big man that NBA teams are going to want to draft? Could that conversation not start with Terrace Reed Jr.? Listen, I know he's not what we would affectionately refer to as a footer, someone who is a clean 7 feet tall, barefoot in the cold, just the shortest that they possibly are. They're still 7 feet tall. Why can't a 6'10", 265-pound guy who is strong as bull, sets good screens, rebounds the way that he does, get shots up over, I'm seeing in the chat, Krivas might be better than Mara. Terrace Reed Jr., 4 blocks, 2 steals. Only real defensive presence that UConn has on a consistent basis. Krivas is flanked with defenders, okay? Jaden on the team, Braden on the team, Koa on the team, Karchenkov, hello, like surrounded and flanked by defenders. I'm not saying that UConn doesn't have solid, okay, decent defenders. They do not have Arizona level perimeter defense, and they sure as heck don't have Arizona level help defense. Ribe coming in off the bench, him or Awaka, who's the most impactful in college basketball today? Not asking who's going to be the better NBA prospect. Who's the more impactful defender today? Tobe Awaka. Reed has so much laid on his shoulders and at his feet that he just answers the bell continuously. At one point was averaging 20 points, 20 rebounds, while still giving you assists, while still giving you rim protection. He brought it again today. UConn absolutely does not win this game without Terrace Reed. I'm not lobbying for him to be a lottery level big man. That's not, you're saying, Steven, okay, like where are you trying to land this plane with this Terrace Reed draft conversation? I'm just saying, why could he not be the third or fourth big man taken in this class? That's all I'm asking. Like, why can't we put him in there with Krivas? Why can't we put him in there with Vesar or whoever the other big man is? Don't come at me with Joshua Jefferson as a big man. I don't believe that. That's just not how I evaluate basketball. If that's you, that's okay. But why can't Terrace Reed Jr. be, the third, fourth best big man in this class? I'm not asking for much, but why can't he do that? He's been doing it all season long. He's doing it in the tournament. That's where I'm at, okay? Whew. I'm a little excited. Are you guys excited? I'm excited. I love basketball so much, man. So proud of my guy, Braylon Mullins. All right, let's have the Duke conversation, okay? This team let it go. I could have sang Frozen there. I have a daughter. I have 2 daughters, actually. Both of them big Frozen fans at one point in their lives. Duke let this game slip away. They had it. They snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory. They let up. They gave UConn life. They did. And it's a shame because Cameron Boozer might have had his best first half. I was hoping that what we saw from him in the first half was going to be what we saw from him all game long. In the first half, I was tweeting, I was messaging the group chat. I was saying that Cameron Boozer was having his best, most complete, most awesome game that I've seen all season long. Those of you who have been paying attention to No Ceilings all season long, when I say that Cam has had his best game all season long, I'm dating this back to exhibitions. I'm dating this back to, non-conference schedule in November. I'm talking about a complete catalog of games that we have watched all season long from Cameron Boozer. And in the first half, he was having his best game in the biggest moment. And I was kind of thinking, as we often do with March Madness, we're like Bart Simpson at the chalkboard where we're saying, I will not let March Madness impact my big board. I will not let March Madness impact my big board. I was absolutely thinking, man, if this is what we have to look forward to with Cam Boozer at the NBA and in the NBA at the next level, geez, it's like maybe he should be number one. Maybe he should be the best prospect. Maybe he is the best prospect in this class. What am I doing having guys like AJ Debayansa, Darren Peterson, Caleb Wilson ranked over Cam Boozer? In the first half, I mean, he had 2 blocks in this game. Both of them came in the first half. I think that, and I see people in the chat like this is a choke job, but does it go to the coach? Does it go to Cam? Absolutely not. I'm not suggesting that this is just one person's fault in particular. You could say it's the other Boozer, Caden, for that pass. Sure, but how many possessions happened before that? It's a team effort. In a win, and it's a team effort and a loss, right? But Cam finished with 27 points on 10 of 21 shooting, was only 1 of 4 from deep, was a 6 of 8 from the free throw line, had 8 rebounds, 4 assists to 4 turnovers, and 2 blocks. Again, those 2 blocks came in the first half. That was the best help defense that I've seen from Cam Boozer all year long. Just the fact that, whether it was Nyongba, whether it was Brown, going up against Terrace Reed, Cam was able to kind of like play off his man. He did a great job of managing like the whole cycling the progressions on defense between basketball, man. Like he was doing a great job of toggling between all of those things defensively. And it led to a couple of huge blocks on his own defensively. Offensively, we saw him look good in transition. We saw him make good reads. We saw him get putbacks. He had 5 offensive rebounds in this game. Of his 8 rebounds, 5 of them came on the offensive side. That's big time. That's huge. Giving second chance points, big time for Cam Boozer. A lot of it laid at his feet. They had 10 offensive rebounds as a team, is what this says, but I'm only seeing 8 added up here. This is a ESPN stat sheet. I don't know how this happened the way that it did. Well, I'll just tell you that I'm counting 8 on the stat sheet right now that I printed out right before the show. I'm seeing Caden Boozer had an offensive rebound. Nicholas Haminia had 1. Patrick Nyongba had 1. Cam Boozer had 5. He was a beast on the offensive glass all night long, getting putbacks. He was playing great help position, helping the block shots. He was doing the Cam Boozer thing where he was making good passes. He was moving the ball. He was spacing the floor. He was his best version of himself for the majority of this game. Now, we'll say some of the concerns, and it's okay to say that we have concerns about Cam Boozer. Nobody's perfect. It's okay. He was blocked quite a bit. The under the basket nature that he has whenever he's in the block did lend itself to him being blocked by folks like Alex Caravan, who almost always comes away with a block or 2 in a game just from rotating over from the corner and throwing his hands up and getting a block. But Cam was the only one who could get it rolling. A lot of Isaiah Evans fans out there. Evans had 7 points on 2 of 6 shooting from the floor, 1 of 4 from deep, and had 2 blocks of his own. Evans got it rolling a little bit in a couple of sequences in the first half, completely disappeared for the rest of the game. For a guy who is getting a lot of, hey, this guy's a first-round draft pick guy, look how much he's improved, and he has. He very well should be deserving of being a first-round guy. I'm just trying to say that he was not visible for most of the game. A guy who I am lobbying for to be a first-round pick because a lot of subtleties to his game. Is he a great three-point shooter overall from every aspect of the three-point line? No, but Dame Sarr, 40% roughly from the corner three-point spot. He's shooting close to 40% on his corner threes. I'll put that in King's English here. Shot well, attacked the basket, even drove a couple of times. He did miss both of his free throws. And I'll put it to you like this. Duke missed 6 free throws. UConn missed 5. And UConn won by 1 point. So old school guy when I was coached growing up. Free throws are free. You got to make your free throws. They talked about that a little bit throughout most of the weekend. Just a weird thing that the free throw shots aren't there. Sarr did miss both of his free throws. And even though he didn't get a defensive stock, we big to do about stocks this year. Again, I don't know how many times he was driven on. I don't know how many times players look to say, hey, I'm guarded by Dame Sarr. Let me get to the rim. Let me get to the basket. Now, Sarr did have one foul, so that means that someone did try him at least once. He looked phenomenal. He's looked phenomenal all tournament long. The fact that he is a freshman, he's younger, he's got pro-level experience. There is a little bit of potential to be tapped into with a little bit of playmaking with the ball in his hand. I love the defensive nature. There might not be another player who's a better perimeter defender than he is. And even though he's not hitting all of his three-pointer shots at a consistent basis, that corner three is going to be a reliable weapon because every NBA system has a guy who can hurt you from the corner. Dame Sarr could be that guy. Caden Boozer had 3 turnovers, most crucial one in the closing moments of that game where he tried to throw the pass over the top of the defense with Duke having the lead. Duke gets the ball. Caden kind of floats around in the kind of like help deny area of the defense. For whatever reason, he had been guarding Braylon Mullins through most of this game. Went off into help in the corner. And then all of the goodness that he was giving on Braylon Mullins goes away whenever he goes away from Mullins to the opposite corner. Mullins hits a three-point shot. Who's to say that Mullins wouldn't have hit that shot if Caden was there? But he wasn't, okay? And he had been doing a good job on him all night. I do want to, even though he did have probably the most critical mistake on the night, Caden Boozer has been playing phenomenal in the conference tournament and in March Madness. This has been the guy who I saw lottery potential in this season. Now, I've kind of tongue-in-cheek joked that should this guy go back to school, should he come out, be a second-round pick to whatever team is picking with his brother, and he's secretly kind of not been his best version of himself until later on in the season, to where a team feels comfortable enough drafting a freshman in the second round to play alongside his brother. He's been in all these commercials. I know it's a stupid train of thought, but, I think like that sometimes. I grew up on Bill Simmons' podcast, I guess, So Caden Boozer, a less than ideal decision that he makes. He still had a fantastic tournament. So that leaves us with talking about, and by the way, UConn next Saturday at 6:09 p.m. Eastern is going to be taking on the Illinois Fighting Illini, who they put this tournament's version of a Cinderella to rest, the Iowa Hawkeyes. Illinois beats this team 71-59 in a game that felt like it was a lot closer. In that Noren's asking, who do I have in this game? I'll get to that. I want to get to Illinois making it to the Final Four, and then I'll kind of preview that matchup and give my prediction there, Noren. So we'll go over how UConn got there. We didn't talk about them yesterday, saving the full Final Four preview and recap for tonight. Okay, so we'll get to that moment here in just a second. But the Illinois Fighting Illini beat the Iowa Hawkeyes 71-59 in a game that, thinking back to it, it didn't feel like it was an 11-point victory. But Illinois kind of kept the pressure on Iowa all night long. On the Iowa side of the house, Bennett Sturts had 24 points on 8 of 17 shooting from the floor. He was 4 of 11 from deep. 3 rebounds, 3 assists, no defensive metrics. Did everything that he could. I will say that Sturts, I would have liked to have seen him be a little bit more aggressive in the closing minutes of the game. It felt like he was too willing to pass the ball off to guys like Tavion Banks, Khalil Combs, Cooper Conch. Like, he was just very, there was no, I'm taking over, I'm the best player on this team, I want the ball in my hand and I want to be the one to take the shot. There was still that typical Coach McCollum egalitarian style of offense where I'm going to do a lot of driving and kicking. And I felt like that kind of bit Iowa in the butt a little bit. You know, Alvaro Figueres, who had a tremendous tournament, only played 9 minutes, was 0 of 2 from the floor, had 2 turnovers and 2 stocks, right? Not the sort of game that that I think many of us were expecting. Given that there was a lot of Tate Stage coming off the bench, finished with 10 points, was 2 of 4 from the floor, 2 of 3 from deep, made all 4 of his free throw attempts, had 3 rebounds. A lot to do about him coming on late in the season as a freshman, kind of a projection narrative going on with him as the game was progressing. Bennett Search did everything he could. Illinois in smart fashion, that double bracket coverage that I've been kind of like tongue-in-cheek referencing throughout the season, it showed itself, and Bennett did have 24 points. And it's tough for me to say this, but it felt like in the closing moments of that game that Bennett was he was more than willing to let other people shoot them back into the game. I just wish that in the last Bennett Search game that we would have saw in those last couple of minutes him just say, you know what, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging. That didn't happen. Now for Illinois, there was a few people who stepped up big time. Andre Stojakovic, there's a big to-do about Stojakovic in this game. Had 17 points off the bench on 7 of 9 shooting from the floor. 3 of 4 from the free throw line. Had 5 rebounds, 1 steal, 3 turnovers. A lot of driving, a lot of attracting attention. He did make some fantastic defensive possessions to kind of force the issue for Illinois to continue to build this league. A lot of Peja Stojakovic in the stands. There was a lot of clips of Peja and, Andre post-game dapping each other up, a little father-son hug. You love to see that type of stuff. A lot of stories about how different of a player Andre and Peja are and how Peja didn't force Andre to be a good shooter like him. Probably wouldn't hurt, but at least, father approves of the son just kind of like taking the last name and being his own man with it. It's been awesome. Tomislav Ivičić had 13 points, 6 of 11 from the floor, only made 1 3-point shot, big time 3-point shot too, with 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 blocks. The star of the show though, Keaton Wagler, who had 25 points on 8 of 17 shooting from the floor, 2 of 7 from deep, 7 of 7 from the free throw line, had 3 assists to 2 turnovers, 2 boards, and a steal. Keaton came on late in this game against Iowa. His second half was far better than his first. The thing that I've grown to appreciate with Keaton is that, listen, a lot of people are going to tell you he's too skinny. We've known this all season long. I've been talking about Keaton Wagler again, dating back to November. He popped off in some box scores very early on. 6'6" guard who is a freshman who is connecting from deep on threes. A lot of us in the scouting community, we're going to take notice of a player like that really quickly. It was easy to kind of like see him fall in love with his game. All season long, we've been talking about how there's a strength deficit with Keaton. Guess what? That's not going to change within a year, and it hasn't, right? The fact that even though he's not strong like we want him to be, he stays on balance. He's not afraid to get to his spots. As a matter of fact, he's very slippery, able to get to the spots on the court that he can score from. He can get to the paint, and of course, he's a good three-point shooter. But he still had 25 points even though he only made 2 3-point shots. He was getting into the paint. He was attacking this Iowa defense who, admittedly, the reason why I picked Illinois to win this game over Iowa when I did the preview is that Iowa's just not a big team. They're just not. Like, even at the guard position, anybody guarding Keaton was going to be at a size disadvantage. And it was pretty impressive for me to see Keaton Wagler like actually bully Bennett Sturts. I know Bennett is a couple inches shorter, and there, you could argue the weight either direction, but Bennett Sturts is a 4-year senior. Keaton Wagler is a 1-year freshman, and we've been talking about how skinny he is. It's just impressive for me to see him get into the body of Bennett Sturts, moving him off of his position and scoring the paint the way that he did. 6 points were inside the 3-point line. He had 7 free throw attempts, drawing a lot of contact, getting to the basket. Very impressive moment for me with Keaton. Still a tricky evaluation. Sundeep is asking me where I have him on my board. I have him in a range, I will say, that goes up to 6, but I believe I have him at like 8 or 9 on my board right now. He might be ninth on my big board. I don't view him as a point guard. I view him as a shooting guard. Some people might say, well, what does it matter if he's going to create with the ball in his hand? I think he's going to be better off the ball than he's going to be on it. And I think that he's okay providing a lot of value and utility that way. I talked about it in the last game that Illinois played, that depending on the game, he might lead your team in assists, which he did. He actually he tied a game high in assists with 3. He didn't have his crazy rebounding night that he had the night before, but again, he stepped up with 25 points. Just depending on whatever the game asks of Keaton Wagler, he's willing to step up. He's willing to do the work. And that's something that at his size, at his age, and you project that he might not get super bulky, but he's going to get naturally stronger, which means that he's going to be able to get to his spots better. He's going to be able to bully more people like he bullied Bennett Search tonight. There's reasons to be optimistic. Excuse me. Sundeep in the chat says I have him at 6. That's where I have Braden Burries, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit. I think there's so many guards in this class that I have a tier, like I said, that ranges from like 5 to 10, maybe 11. I think that it's pretty interchangeable. I think returners, I don't imagine that anyone in my top 10 is going to return, but obligatory, depending on who returns, depending on the draft order, might have a little bit of a say in who goes where, obviously. Not going to be surprised if Keaton goes higher. I just have him a little bit lower because he's not super athletic. I'm not asking him to be, prime Vince Carter out there, but he is a below the basket finisher. He does have good decel game. He sees the game and feels the game so well that if he naturally adds strength, it's hard to imagine that he's not going to be successful, at least on the offensive end. Defensively, might have a little bit more concerns with him, which is why I have him ranked a little bit lower. So, to get to the point that Norrin Rad is asking, Norrin said, Steven, give us your predictions. Who do you have winning and why? He didn't ask why. I'm just going to throw that in there as a bonus. So, again, Saturday, April 4th. 6:09 on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. The Illinois Fighting Illini, who apparently have a weird name. I don't know what an Illini is other than someone from Illinois, but it's a cool nickname. The Illinois Fighting Illini versus the UConn Huskies in a battle of the 3 and the 2 seed on that side of the bracket. I like UConn. Illinois is huge. They, I believe, are the tallest team in college basketball. Coach Underwood, the fact that he went from being a JUCO coach, and some fun things coming out of the postgame from that team winning, with Coach, thanking his wife for putting up with him and all the years of, struggle and strife that they went through. As a husband, I love to hear stuff like that. The fact that he started in JUCO ranks and he kind of scratched and clawed to get to where he is. This team is recruiting in a very unique manner, and they've got some guys who have pro experience overseas. They got some guys who clearly have a lot of size and strength and a little bit of shooting touch as well. They're bringing in unheralded freshmen who apparently they have the only eyes to see that Keaton Wagler could be a star in college basketball. Hard to pick against that team. However, I do think that Terrace Reed, the polished cannonball, is what I'm going to start calling him, because clearly he's bruising, clearly he's going to carve out space, but he has a little bit more of a pretty game than what he ultimately gives credit for. Anyone who picks Illinois, I kind of understand why. They do have, I would consider, probably the better and more consistent guard play, which in the tournament does mean a lot. I'm probably selling this Illinois team short, because Keaton Wagler as a guard with size and the height that this team has and the depth, like don't get it twisted, being able to bring in the players off the bench like Stojakovic, like Big Z, Ivasic off the bench, that depth could be critical. I'm probably just riding the high of the UConn Huskies beating Duke. I did have UConn losing in the Final Four on my bracket to Florida. With Florida out of the way, and it's Illinois, I think I'm going to ride the hot hand here with UConn. I think Coach Hurley's coaching and enthusiasm is going to shine through. I think if the guards, or a wing like Alex Caravan, if he can be anything close to what he normally is in a game, it's going to be an interesting game. It could come down to Jake Davis getting hot for Illinois. It could come down to Braylon Mullins hitting a game-winning shot again. Who knows? I'm going to go with UConn. I think this game is close. I think it's probably a 6-point game, somewhere in that neighborhood, if not closer. So that's where we're going to land the plane on that discussion. There you go, Norin. I have UConn over Illinois. Don't particularly feel good about it, but if they win, I'm definitely going to say, I told you so. All right, let's get to the other side of this. So the late game on Saturday, this is going to take place at 8:49 p.m. Eastern Time. A game that everyone is going to, you're going to see it. If you haven't seen it already on social media, you're going to see it. There's probably even going to be people on daytime, sports shows. There's probably going to be all kinds of narrative about this, that the Michigan versus Arizona game, again, at 8:49 on those same stations, TBS, True TV, and HBO Max, that this is the true national championship, that whoever wins this matchup is going to go on to win the entire thing. We'll see. We have a little ways to go, but Arizona and Michigan. Woo-wee. It's hard to really pick who I want to start with here because there's just so much here. Let's start with Michigan because they played today, and boy did they play, and boy is there a lot to talk about with this team. Michigan, for lack of a better phrase, beat the brakes off of Tennessee 95-62, and most of this game felt like a formality. Michigan did not play with their food for most of the game. Well, I'll talk about a play here in a little bit that I'm sure that if anyone watched this game knows exactly where I'm going to go with that comment, but they rarely played with their food in this game. Yaxel Lindenborg led the way. 27 points, 10 of 19 shooting from the floor, 3 of 9 from deep, 4 of 7 from the free throw line, had 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal. Big time performance from Yaxel. Most of these missed threes felt like it came in the second half when the game wasn't really particularly close. To start the game, Yaxel was the sun and the moon for this team, hitting all kinds of crazy shots. He was hitting timely three-pointers. Some of them, yes, were wide open, but still, you got to hit those wide open shots. We'll talk about a player in this game who didn't hit wide open shots. But Yaxel Lindenborg, tremendous throughout the game. Fantastic performance from him. The only nitpick that people have with Yaxel Lindenborg, and I'm seeing people in the chat ask, could Yaxel go top 10? Where does he go in this draft? I don't think necessarily the age should come up, but let's contextualize this. I talked about it in the preview show that he is like 4 years and 2 or 3 months older than Cooper Flagg, who is playing in the NBA right now as a rookie. Someone in our group chat shared with me the draft class that he is a part of, and that it was astonishing. It was what the RJ Barrett class, guys who've been in the league now for like ever. And I know that there's a lot that played into that. Yes, Yaxel was a not heavily recruited guy. As a matter of fact, he was a JUCO guy. He had to fight his way to get to UAB, and then obviously 6-year college student last season with Michigan, best player in college basketball. People in the chat says, yep, turns 24 in September. He's 3 years away from what's considered consensusly to be to be in his prime. 27 is typically when players are assumed to kind of hit their prime. He's older, and maybe that's why he looks like the best player in college basketball this year. Maybe that's why Michigan is the best team in basketball this year. But at some point, right, like you still have to give him credit for being in the position that he's in and performing at the level he is. I would rather him dominate college basketball at 24 years old than the alternative with, if I can keep it real with you guys, we have people who are coming out of the G League who are trying to come back to college and give a second tryout for the NBA, who are coming off the bench for D1 schools. And here's Yaxel in his first year of like high major basketball dominating. Okay. And he's doing it in a multitude of ways. He's defending up and down the lineup. He is crashing the glass. 4 of his 7 rebounds came off the offensive end. And I know he was 3 of 9 from deep, but when the game was competitive, he was hitting. He really was. Now you're probably asking like, okay, well, if the age isn't a big factor, is there anything else that we need to be worried about? I'm going to put it to you like this. I'm not worried. You know, we can put the dinosaur conversation, we can put a pin in that. You know, people are asking like, how does he compare with like a guy like Dalton Connect? Well, Cedric Coward seems to be doing okay. For every cautionary tale, there is an exception to the rule, and it depends on where you stand with the player as to which one of those examples you want to kind of point to and use in your favor for the player that you believe in, right? Yaxel has a little bit of growing up to do in terms of maturity. He is no stranger to, kind of licking his lips and cocking an eyebrow, flashing this kind of like tongue-in-cheek Cheshire Cat smile whenever he's talking about players the way that they do. At one point in this game, Carey from Tennessee bumps into Morris Johnson Jr. when there's a little bit of a tussle. When the guys were not letting go of the basketball, Yaxel was on the bench. You see him doing like the Hulkamania kind of point to the scoreboard, waving at people, smiling and laughing. In the halftime interview, he's saying that these guys can't compete. That he's, apparently offended that Alabama was guarding him with Amari Allen, who's one of the most productive freshmen in the entire nation. And to top all of that all off, after this little tussle, after Yaxel is off the bench and, Carey and Morez Johnson are getting into it with each other, and Amari Evans and, Morez Johnson are getting into it, Yaxel's back in the game. The Michigan Wolverines inbound and the ball is rolling off the floor. And I'm talking like 2K level glitch happens where Yaxel bends over to pick up the ball and just doesn't. It feels like the longest, 5 to 7 seconds in basketball history that he is just letting the shot clock stay at 30, but the time is running out. And he's literally smiling while this happens. Sundeep in the chat says, yes, he doesn't realize that scouts are watching all of that behavior, poise, and cockiness. I think he knows. He, for a player who is one of the oldest players within this class, he kind of has no problem with being a little bit brash, with being a little bit of a showman. And maybe that's why he's as good as he is because he has this level of arrogance, this confidence is what I'm sure he would call it. He wouldn't call it arrogance or cockiness. He would just call it confidence in his ability, right? I think that anybody who watches that, and this is just my opinion, please, I'm allowed to be wrong too, okay? I think anybody who weighs that as a reason to not draft him is being a little silly. Because if you look in the NBA right now, LaMelo Ball, I understand that he has automobile accidents and stuff like that. But he is, as the kid would say, he's corny. He's a cornball. I would say he's a dork, right? Michael Porter Jr. in the offseason would not stay off of podcasts. Is he doing anything inherently dangerous or wrong? No. Neither is Yaxel. He's not hurting anybody. I mean, if we want to talk about players like for Michigan State, Fears is literally kicking people, hitting people, diving on them. Yaxel isn't doing any of those things. Just a little bit of a trash talker. Just a little bit of a cornball. Again, he's the oldest player in this class, but, he snicker, giggle, hee hee ha ha, you suck type thing. It's just, if he gets humbled in the pros, then okay. If he gets humbled in the pros, okay. If he goes to a really good team, it might get worse. I'm just going to warn you now. because he's really good in basketball. He's playing on one of, if not the best team in college basketball. And he's winning, and he's having a good time doing it. You may old man shakes fist at cloud at him. You can do that if you want to. I'm not saying you have to like what he's doing. I would just be careful to not, let that be an indictment of him as a human being. I wouldn't let that be an indictment of his talent. Maybe that in conjunction with his age, maybe some team is just like, you know what, I don't want the extra attention. Okay, fine. Maybe some other team does who's going to be really good and continues to just pick up good players. And that's what I think Yaxel is. Do I have him top 10? No. Do I have him on lottery? Yes. I'm aware of the kind of red flags within the age aspect of him that teams might have with him. I have those with, let's say, Thomas Houck. On top of, like, with the skill that Houck has, I don't know how. Look, he's a big hustle guy. I don't know how, like, NBA polished he is. He's a try-hard. I don't have a player like that in my lottery. But I have Yaxel, who has shown to be versatile up and down the front court. He can pass in the half court and in transition. He throws those amazing outlet passes that everybody loves to talk about with a Cam Boozer. Yaxel can throw those. He's hitting from deep. He's playing good defense. That skills that NBA teams typically like. If he wants to showboat a little bit in a game, I don't think that NBA teams are going to particularly care. So let's Morris Johnson Jr. had a great game. 12 points, 5 boards, no other metrics, but my gosh, did he like put the clamps on people. He got into it a little bit with an Amari Evans. I like the competitiveness. I want my big men to have a little bit of a mean streak. As long as they're not hurting people, playing dirty, anything like that. Yaxel does not do that. He's not afraid to step up to you if you want to test his grit. He's not afraid to step up to you, but I thought he had a fantastic game. Ade Mara had 11 points, 4 boards, no assists, but 2 blocks and a steal. I think that we saw a lot of what people like in him. And I just want to shout out real quick, Trey McKinney. I'm looking forward to him next year. I think that he's going to be a really good prospect next year. To the Tennessee side of the house. This thing still on? Listen, I said in the preview show that Nate Ament had 18 points. He filled up the box score. He looked aggressive. I just needed consistency from him. That if the 18-point game and the way that he was moving on the court in their last game where they did advance to make the Elite Eight, that if that was the type of performance that I could get from Nate Ament consistently, he'd be way higher on my board. Michigan defended Nate Ament with Nomari Burnett, Elliot Cadeau, Roddy Gale, and Trey McKinney. All of those players are guards. All of those players, I believe Nate Ament has a, let's say anywhere, depending on, I'm not looking at all their heights, just kind of guessing in my head. I think Roddy Gale might be the tallest player out of that group. Let's just say conservatively that Nate Ament, against all of those guys, has a 5-inch height advantage on. Those were the guys that Nate Ament played against. He wasn't lined up against Yaxel. He wasn't lined up against Morris Johnson. He wasn't lined up against Ade Mara. On the one possession where Ament guarded Mara, he got put in a little spin cycle blender and got dunked on. But defensively, Nate Ament was guarded by point guards. Shooting guards on some occasion, but for the most part, he was defended by point guards. If you're 6'10", you're defended by point guards and stifled. You're shooting 0 of 3 from deep. You're 2 of 12 from the floor. And you have 1 block. I need consistency from him. That's all I've been saying all season long. I don't think that he's a bad player. I'm not giving up hope on Nate Ament. But I think that he's at an interesting crossroads right now to where he's going to have a tough question to answer. I'm sure, being in the position that he's in, it's even harder than what I can even comprehend right now. But trying my best to put myself in his shoes with a little bit of life experience that I have. Nate Ament is going to have to answer the question of, he's going to test. We know that, right? Like we know that he's going to go out there and test. We know that he's going to seek the feedback of NBA teams. Does he say, "Hey, I'm going to go and test. I want to go and get in front of these NBA teams. I want to get their feedback. I want to impress them in drills and in combines and things of that nature"? Does he say, "I want to just find the one, all it takes is one team, one owner, one whoever, one lead decision maker that says, I see tall, I see someone who can dribble at his size. I see that Cameron Carr, as soon as he left Tennessee, he became the best version of himself. So maybe there's a little bit of, I'm not an anti-Tennessee guy, but I'm just saying if I'm trying to be optimistic on Nate Ament, part of my argument says that, look, Cameron Carr, he was highly touted coming out of high school, went to Tennessee for 2 seasons, did not do great. As soon as he left Tennessee, went to Baylor, which is still not like the most player-friendly ecosystem to help your draft stock. As soon as he left Tennessee for Baylor, his stock improved. We all remember who Cameron Carr is now. Maybe there's a little bit of Tennessee stink on Nate Ament. We've seen what he did on the high school circuit. When everything is clicking with him, he's a really tall 3-and-D threat who can dribble a little bit, who can, as a stationary playmaker, has some upside. All it takes is just for one team in the lottery to say, you are our best bet at a superstar in the NBA with where we're selecting in the draft. That's all it takes, is just one team to say something like that. Nate Ament has to weigh that against, let me humble myself. And I'm not suggesting that Nate Ament isn't humble, okay? But let's be honest with ourselves here. I might benefit from going back to college. Maybe it's at Tennessee, maybe it's not, but maybe I go back to college and try to improve my game. I try to improve my decision-making time, because right now Nate Ament is a stop and survey dude. He's going to catch the ball. He's going to read the defense, and then he's going to try to dribble. Once he's dribbling, he is not really going to pass the ball. He's going to finish. Maybe we look at ways to where we can improve the processing speed on the offensive end. Maybe I'm put in a position to where I can be a more impactful defender. That's really a tough conversation that Nate Ament has to have with himself. I can tell you that there are a lot of people right now who are just throwing out go back to school. I don't disagree with that, but I also understand that Nate Ament might just say, let me try my hand in the pros. I trust myself to be a better pro than a college player. I've struggled with him for most of the year, and I try to get to the optimistic side. I really, really do. I think with more seasoning, he could be a really good NBA player. For him to improve in the NBA, as our guy Tyler Metcalf likes to say, in order to get better at basketball, you have to play basketball. And if he's not guaranteed a shot at being able to do that in the NBA, maybe going back to school is the best route for him. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to say. Intel season is going to have a lot to do with that, so on and so forth. Not the best way for Nate Ament to go out, though. Really not. But Michigan wins this game in convincing fashion by 33 points. I mean, they're ready. They're ready for the Final Four. Interesting game. Now, they will be going up against the Arizona Wildcats, who also had a big game. Not as big as the Michigan rout against Tennessee, but the Arizona Wildcats, the day before, they beat the Purdue Boilermakers, and Coach Matt Painter did a fantastic job, as he typically does, coaching that game. Arizona beats up the Purdue Boilermakers, and I have to continue to say I'm thoroughly impressed with the production of Koa Pete. I think that the injury situation with him kind of weighed against him in rankings for me, because he's also having to deal with Braden Burries being, in my opinion, the third best just overall guard. If we want to say off guard, the second best off guard within this class. I have him sixth on my board, with Ivan Karchenkov being like flat out one of my favorite players to watch. I understand that my guy is a little bit of a zero behind the 3-point line, but that doesn't make him a zero offensively. I tweeted out yesterday that draft him. I love him. I don't care that he doesn't shoot. There's a lot of people that are just optimistic that Karchenkov is going to shoot. You never say never, right? You never rule anything out. I'll just put it to you like this. He hasn't shot well in college. And in any credible level of competition, he hasn't been a shooter. Now, the shot looks pretty. I agree with everybody who says that. It's just, it doesn't go in. So, Karchenkov, who, by the way, finished with 18 points on 7-11 shooting, had 8 rebounds and 1 steal. The defensive presence was far more than what that 1 steal would lead you to believe. Koa Pete stole the show again. I sent out to the group chat that he did his best Caleb Wilson impression, and by that I mean that he got the ball close to the rim, kind of hit that little step back fadeaway mid-range shot that he likes to get to. Sundeep in the chat said I said to this Rucker that Koa Pete reminds me so much of Corliss Big Nasty Williamson. You're speaking my language, guy. Pride of Russellville, Arkansas, pride of the University of Arkansas Razorbacks, Corliss Williamson. Got me to be a Detroit Piston fan just by the nature of them having him. I grew up liking the Phoenix Suns because of Joe Johnson. Grew up liking the Detroit Pistons because of Corliss Williamson. So I might move Koa Pete up my big board just from that comparison. Sundeep. So Koa Pete, though, big, strong, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, has a lot of feel. Defensively, not a defensive metric to speak of. Feel like he did a really good job, though, against Trey Kaufman-Wren when he was lined up against him. We saw him defend up and down the lineup as well. Rucker, who is an Arizona Wildcats fan, by the way, and I do believe that he wants the best for Koa Pete, did say, hey, look, listen, I love Koa Pete, but what is the one skill that he's hanging his hat on in the NBA? And that got me thinking, because I didn't really know how to answer that. I think it's versatility with size and feel at his age. It's very vague. It's almost like some people who are scouts and evaluators say, what's your NBA scout or what's your NBA day one skill? What can you step in and do day one? And if you're kind of this jack of all trades, really master at none, even at the size that Koa Pete is, some teams might be turned off by that. And I'm seeing Nora Rad in the chat say winner. That works for Cam Boozer until tonight. No offense to Cam Boozer. He had a fantastic year. And I think that he's going to be drafted very high. And I think he's going to have a long NBA career ahead of him. I would say just toughness and versatility. And I think that he's just going to be a better pro than a college player because he had to play in this everybody eats Arizona offense. And I think that an NBA team is going to put him in a spot depending on who that team is. Is he going to be a rebounder? Sundeep in the chat says rebound maybe. I've kind of compared him to a Jaime Jaquez where I think he's just going to be a big physical forward with passing feel. And there's a lot of utility in that in the NBA. I think it's going to take a very specific circumstance for him to be the best version of himself. But I think he can fit in. I mean, in this game against Purdue, Koa was awesome. It's not in the stat sheet, but I counted 2 pancake screens, which I equate to a pancake block because, his dad was an offensive lineman in the NFL. So the screens that Koa Pete set, he had 2 guys on the floor. They were clean screens. He's just so daggum strong that people bounced off him like bugs off of a windshield. It was fantastic to see. I love to see that level of physicality. But Koa, listen, I hear people compare him to Aaron Gordon because Aaron Gordon was this big athletic dude who could do a lot of things, wasn't a good shooter in college, wasn't the best playmaker, but he's just this vertical above the rim athlete. Koa can finish above the rim, but he's not like super springy, bouncy like Aaron Gordon was. And it took Aaron years to get to the point to where he got in the NBA. And maybe that's where people are taken to where Aaron Gordon wasn't really a shooter until late Orlando Magic career, beginning of Denver Nuggets career, where he had to become a three-point threat. Koa has been reluctant as a shooter all season long. He's just not one of these guys who are going to take threes. He didn't take one in this game, and he was 2 of 4 from the free throw line. So those shooting indicators are just not there right now. Now, based on research that we've all done at No Ceilings, if you believe that he is a guy, you draft him. And guys just typically, like, if you're investing resources into them and they're getting playing time, historically speaking, like dudes just get better at shooting in the NBA because of the resources, the availability, the seriousness. Like you're a professional athlete now in a completely different way than you were at any other point. Like even though you're getting NIL money, you're playing what, like 30 games? That's roughly a third of an NBA season. You kind of have to step into being a real true pro now in the NBA. So maybe you buy in long term that a 3-point shot is there. Maybe you're just saying he's got a pro level body. We know that he's going to come in off the bench and get rebounds, that he's got playmaking feel, and that he's going to lock in defensively. We believe in the tools. Maybe you do all that stuff, but he doesn't really have like a, other than this, the Caleb Wilson-esque little turnaround mid-range shot. Other than that, scoring wise, he doesn't really bring anything else. That doesn't take away from the fact that he had a fantastic night. Jaden Bradley had 14 points on 4 of 9 shooting from the floor, had 6 assists to only 1 turnover. I'm starting to kind of like Jaden, guys. I know it's kind of like the recency bias. We only remember the thing that's been in front of us is the most recent that it has been. I'm starting to fall in love with the little mid-range pull-up. He can be off-platform when he hits it. He is a pretty good connective passer. I think if I have a second-round pick, I'm probably just going to get Jaden Bradley, and I haven't been there for most of the season. It's kind of what have you done for me lately type of a thing. Great game, has had a pretty good tournament. He's Mr. Pac-12. He was the Pac-12 Player of the Year. Say with that what you will, but he's had a really good season. I think if you need a third, fourth guard in the NBA, why not get the guy who's just been winning all year long? I could easily see that. Braden Burries was 4 of 10 from the floor. All 4 of those shots came from deep. He had 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 steals. Guys, if you wanna find a player, if you see a player and you want to be able to say like that's a Steven guy, get me the guy who has strength and who plays just hard no matter what. Like Arizona's winning this game by double digits at one point. Ball's on the floor. Braden Burries just sprints, dives on the floor, goes out of his way to be in the vicinity to be able to recover this ball, while Purdue is just assuming that the ball is just going to get back to them, kind of like out of this scramble situation. Braden Burries diving on the floor, understanding that this hasn't been his best scoring night, so he is going to go and get 6 rebounds. He is going to go get 3 steals. If you're going to be this kind of combo guard who on ball, off ball, 6'4", I still see people call him old because he's like a 20-year-old freshman. Call him a sophomore and I'm still going to feel the way that I feel about him. Like this guy is just relentless. He is constantly going after the ball, no matter what his shooting performance looks like. This is the type of dude that I want on my team. I have him 6th on my board. Even in a what we would call an off night, still was 4 of 7 from deep, hit 2 free throws out of his 2 attempts. Again, 6 rebounds on the night. That would have been the second most rebounds for the opposing team, by the way. That's how dominant of a rebounding team this Arizona team is. If you were just to airdrop Braden Burries from his team to Purdue, he would have been second on that team in rebounds. So big time night, big time performance. He led the entire game in steals with 3. I'm really big on him. I just think the upside with it. I saw Bill Simmons even message it out. So, if Bill Simmons is tweeting out that he wants all the Braden Burry stocks, maybe, these big time NBA guys who don't really watch a lot of college basketball, if he's willing to say that, it's probably a little bit of something there. So, and I just, just a real quick tip of the cap. I had mentioned that Braden Smith might be inefficient in this game. He had 13 points on 4 of 15 shooting. Had 7 assists. He had 5 rebounds and 1 steal. Tough game. NCAA leading assist guy. Nothing to sneeze at. Another guy, we talked about Corliss Williamson on this show, and me on my birthday, and Braden Smith, all 3 from Russellville. The big 3 Russellville guys here. During the game, I was proud to hear that they shouted out Arkansas Tech, which is this very small, little school in the town that I was born in, right across the street from a very established Whataburger site. Just an awesome campus, kind of roundabout community, whatever. Just getting romantic here. Shout out to Braden Smith in the night. that he had. Very big game. So that leads us to predictions here, okay? Michigan versus Arizona in the Battle of the Tylers. The Tyler Metcalf Michigan Wolverines versus the Tyler Rucker Arizona Wildcats. And if anybody has any ideas for how those two do a show where they talk about those two schools going up against each other, like Rock and Stone Cold, whatever duel that you want to throw their way, go look them up on their socials. Hit us up at No Ceilings NBA for any show ideas that you have between the Battle of the Tylers between Michigan and Arizona here. This is a tough game. I think that Michigan might have the size advantage, weirdly enough, because Mount Krivos is one guy, but Michigan has Ade Mara, who can make a lot of other people look really small. They also have Morez Johnson, who him and Koa Pete, they're going to be such a fun matchup. Yaxel Lindenberg and Ivan Karchenkov is going to be just showtime. I can't wait to see those two go after each other, because as demonstrative as Yaxel Lindenberg can be, Ivan Karchenkov is a very passionate, real filled with heat type of a defender. I can't wait to see what those two look like against each other. So, Michigan's Yaxel Lindenberg versus Arizona's Ivan Karchenkov is going to be fun. Then you can get into the Namari Burnett, Jaden Bradley, and the Elliot Cadeau, Braden Burries. I think that the guard play is going to be interesting. This is a tough one. I'm going to go Arizona. I've had Arizona winning this whole thing the entire time. And I'm seeing the chat. Regional manager Michael Scott said, I saw Steven last year at Portsmouth sitting up front with his backwards hat. Was going to go say hi, but I would expose my identity and he would call me fugly. Would never do such a thing. Michael Scott, come on. And I'm just going to put out, I'm going to be at Portsmouth this year. Sundeep says I don't look 36, maybe 28. You guys are being way too nice to me. But it is my birthday. I guess I understand it. But thank you very much. If I'm at Portsmouth and you see me, please come and say hi. I would be upset at you if you saw me and were afraid to come and talk to me, as opposed to just, coming up. I'm not a good looking guy, either. So just come and say hi. It is what it is. Back to the game. I'm going to pick Arizona over Michigan because I buy the depth of Arizona, even though Michigan's got some really daggum good depth too. March Madness comes down to guard play. I trust the guard play of Arizona over the looming height that Michigan has. Norn in the chat says, when and where is Pitt this year? It's in Portsmouth, Virginia, and I believe it is the week of the 13th of April. So coming up very soon, Nornrad. I actually applied for credentials recently. Jam did too. Expecting to hear back from them. And then we already have a place that we're going to be staying. So I will be in Virginia for Portsmouth, and it's going to be a good time. So if you're in the Portsmouth, Virginia area, you're going to watch the game. Google it. It's real easy to find. I'm definitely down to talk to anybody who wants to be there. So that's going to do it for the preview. So again, predictions for Saturday, and we'll do a preview show probably too, the day of the preview, since the games don't start until 6 p.m. Eastern. I have UConn over Illinois. I think that game is going to be really, really close. And I have Arizona over Michigan. I think that game has potential to be really, really close. So that's going to do it for the breakdown, guys. Thank you so much for coming out and hanging out with me here on a Sunday evening. Shout out again to the schedule makers. I'm going to be wrapping up a show before 9:30 at night on a Sunday. I love it so much. We will be back. We will have our normally scheduled shows as well. I think Jam and I are going to be going live on Tuesday talking NBA draft tiers, which is going to be a very fun show. And we will give an update to the days until the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament. So Sundeep's asking where the rum. I haven't got into it since the other night, Sundeep. And thank you, everybody, for the birthday wishes and the well wishes and the God blesses and all that stuff. It really means a lot. Thank you all. But I'm going to wrap up the show here so I can go spend the rest of the evening with my wife. So for the No Ceilings Collective here at the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show on YouTube, we're also on your podcast player of choice. Again, if you did not hit subscribe, what are you doing? At least do it on my birthday. If you're not going to do it any other time, do it for me on my birthday. To quote my favorite band ever, The Temptations, I ain't too proud to beg. Okay, so hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, 5 stars on your podcast player of choice. For the No Ceilings team, for myself, and for the basketball community at large, we will catch up with you all next time. Much love, y'all.